Hello, all those beautiful faces. How we doing? Stephanie checking in with another episode of Class Disruption. And today we're talking about getting these school buildings reopened. So it is more important than ever that you share this video so we can spread the movement to a district near you. All families deserve an option for in-person schooling because this remote stuff is just not working. So like I said, like this video, leave a comment down below where we can support the reopening school building efforts in your district. Also, make sure you're following me on Twitter at Class Disruption, and make sure you're following at Open Schools US. They are putting all the different movements from across the country together. They're letting people know about how they can get involved, get organized, where the petitions are, where the rallies are, and amplifying those voices so we can get these schools reopened. And if you're new here, welcome. We love your beautiful face. We are so glad to have you. Hit that subscribe button and that bell so you can get notified every time I drop a video. We're going to be following this issue very closely, like we follow a lot of issues in education, and we have a lot of great conversations here. So definitely hit that bell, hit that subscribe button so we can keep this conversation going. But like I said, today we are talking more about the effort across the country now to reopen these school buildings. I covered a couple videos in the past about our rallies that we've had, about all the reasons why we should have the school buildings reopened. So if you haven't seen those videos, definitely check them out, because today in this video, we're going to be focusing specifically on dispelling the myth that has developed around the school reopening effort about nice white parents, about it being driven specifically for the benefit of white parents and white students and not considering the needs of students of color. And we're going to talk today for all the reasons that this is just a completely untrue narrative to discredit this movement. So I started seeing this trend a few weeks ago, right around the time when we had our first rally, and I kept hearing about, oh, these nice white parents, a lot of tweets that went something to the effect of this: too much about NYC school reopening centers a small subset of white parents. Even evoking nice white parents is still centering them, thereby ignoring Black, Latinx, Asian, and other people of color in the conversation. So he's even mad at himself for the framing of the issue around nice white parents. Let's continue on in the thread. In a city where the vast majority of public school students are students of color, it's imperative for our policies to highlight race and ethnicity as undeniable factors for school transformation. That's it. That's the whole framework. It's really that simple, right? I mean, it's not that I disagree with some of the points being said, but I don't think that's it. I think that's a little bit one-dimensional. But I digress. Let's continue on. Our public schools can't always flap to the winds of what a small set of politically connected, exclusive, and exclusionary set of parents determines for a system with 1 million kids, the majority of whom continue to get minoritized. Choice is nothing without this. So we're going to go through in this video all the reasons why this is a completely false narrative and false framing of who these parents are and how remote learning is affecting all students, and in particular those students he says that he wants to center in the conversation. And similarly, just yesterday, the Chicago Teachers Union tweeted out, "The push to reopen schools is rooted in sexism, racism, and misogyny." Well, is it now? So you can already see they're running out of arguments. But like I said, we're going to steelman their arguments and show you exactly why this narrative that they are pushing is false and why it is hurting the exact students that they say that they are trying to help. But before we get into that, we're going to look at some footage from the rally yesterday, and we're going to hear from a fellow Bronx teacher about his experience with hybrid and how it made such a difference for those students who came into the building, along with another Bronx resident who's seen firsthand how much our kids are suffering right now.
Pueden aprender de forma remota para los estudiantes que no tienen un hogar estable y para los estudiantes que tienen padres que trabajan en persona. Thank you for allowing me to share the testimonies. Have a great
day. My name is Josue Perez. I'm here in this rally supporting the education to open school because we need that the students are not learning to this remote system. A school needs to be open. We're doing a disservice to our students. I'm a math teacher. Learning math remotely is impossible. So the kids are not learning the skill and tools they need, the concepts that they will help them to be better in college and to be great professionals in the future. And before that, just creating a gap, especially minority and low-income families that they don't have the extra support that they need. They're going to struggle mightily if the school are not open. Open school now. We need our students to have the support that they need.
How you doing? I'm Sammy Ravelo. I am a retired public employee and parent of kids in the Bronx that go to school. We are seeing right now the lack of planning at the part of the administration. They do not have a plan in place now. After 10 weeks of knowing how to deal with sending our kids to school safely. We know now, and the numbers tell us that the kids are safer in school than at home. And they learn when they are not learning remotely. So we are making a call, and I'm here and supporting my friends in telling the administration, open the schools, and let's make sure that that gap doesn't grow wider between the kids that are staying home and the kids that are coming to school. Thank you.
So from the footage right away, you can see that it is a diverse coalition of families that is rallying to reopen these schools. The two men who I had the privilege of speaking with, they're from the Bronx, they're men of color, and they attested to firsthand the impact that it is having on students of color. But we don't even need these anecdotal testimonies. We don't need to rely on going back and forth and saying, no, we're not nice white parents. Yes, you are nice white parents. The data that is coming out is absolutely clear that this is disproportionately affecting students of color. Just last week, CNN dropped the headline, Black, Hispanic, and poor students suffered the most when COVID shut down schools, a report finds. And this has been over and over in many headlines. The students who are suffering the most are already the ones who are having the hardest time. The gap that existed is the one that is persisting and widening even more due to this pandemic. So the notion that this is not just for nice white parents, right? Because that's one thing, right? It is definitely to their benefit too, but the idea that it is to the detriment of the other children to propose for schools to open is totally false. We can see who is suffering the most. So any opening of the school buildings, any opportunities for students to get in-person instruction is an opportunity to make it disproportionately better for those students of color then. They're the ones who have to gain the most from it opening. Well, so much of what I do is because I see myself as fighting for justice and equality, and particularly because where I grew up, I saw the different lines and I saw the ways that they were drawn with race and socioeconomic status. And I recognize that these are pervasive issues in America. But too often I see this new movement, or this movement that has been, growing over the past decade. Too often what I see happening is this taking of the language of equity, the language of social justice, of racial justice, and then creating a narrative that doesn't actually seek to solve what it wants to solve. And we can see this again and again. Like I said, the Chicago Teachers Union doesn't even have any argument to the point where this is what they're suggesting. Like, that is what you say when you don't have an argument. Now, again, I don't want to straw man their argument. I want to come up with a strong man. And so what I see as the strongest aspect of their argument is that, okay, 30% of the students were attending in-person learning. Now, mind you, in New York City, 30% is 335,000 or so students, right? That puts them as one of the top 10 biggest school districts in the city. Whereas 70% chose all remote learning. And so that's approximately 650,000, 700,000 students. There's, of course, lots of students that are unaccounted for. Enrollment has gone down, but approximate numbers. So their argument is 70% of the students chose online learning. That's where our resources should go. And because most of the students in the New York City public school system are majority students of color, By not doing that, you are centering whiteness and these nice white parents. And I have several responses to this. First of all, if you look at the data about who does choose in-person learning, the majority of those students are students of color. Now, there is a disproportionate amount between the overall representation of white students in the system, around 15%, and 24% are actually the students who chose in-person learning. But again, the vast majority of students who were benefiting from in-person learning were students of color. And again, that's 335,000 students. It's no small amount. It is the 10th, like if they were on their own, they would be in the top 10 largest school districts in the country. Now, on top of that, I would argue anything that we did to strengthen the online program would also serve to strengthen the in-person program. Because remember, it's a blended system. So while they are saying that it is possible that K-5 might get up to 5 days a week in person, there's already pushback on that from schools, or they haven't seen a lot of push. And again, we don't even have the middle schools and high schools open. So most likelihood is that you're going to be in person some days and at home some days. So anything you do to strengthen the online program is going to serve those students as well, because they have to be proficient at the online thing. Besides, as a teacher, I find a lot of the online stuff, even though I wouldn't do it necessarily the same if I was in person, all these skills are giving me more ideas and could only strengthen my pedagogy and in-person approach as well. So when I asked the teacher specifically what she would suggest that they do to improve online learning, this is what she said. All things equity related. There are schools that do strictly online learning, provide students laptops, printers, and internet, train staff, and know how to teach online. Students across the state get the same quality education no matter what their location. That's equitable education. And so while I think that these are noble things to strive for, I don't know about the printer. I mean, I don't even have a working printer. But definitely like laptops and an internet connection for every student. I think that is something that is important. But again, it's only something that would serve to strengthen that hybrid program, right? Students need laptops often when they're coming into school still. They're going to use that on their days that they're at home. Teachers should be proficient in these programs even beyond this online learning, not because we're going to do it the way that we're doing now, disconnected, but I was already using a lot of this different technology to support my instruction and enhance it in school for collaborating in those same spaces. And to finish this off, I wanted to pull up this tweet from one of the leading voices in the movement, Karen Vetus, and it really is, again, highlighting the difference between the arguments that we're making and how they're based on facts and they're based on science and they're based on what the experts are saying versus what the people that are saying, who are framing this as nice white parents. So on the one hand, you have the parents from across the US putting out an article on Medium, and we're going to go through that really quick. And then on the other hand, we have the Chicago Teachers Union tweet, right? When you don't have evidence on your side, you resort to personal attacks, and personal attacks that don't even make any sense. Because we know misogyny, like we know moms are the ones who are at home supporting their students, still doing their jobs, they're the ones who are taking the brunt of this. So it's like they don't even make any sense. But let's look at this article. Let's go over the facts, the evidence, and the reasons why we need to get these schools reopen. So the article on Medium is called Parents Protest Across the Country for Open Schools. Coast to coast, parents are demanding that leaders act on the consistent advice of public health experts and open previously closed schools. So this was published just yesterday on the day that we went to the rally. And it says, we're not going to go through the whole thing, but we're just going to highlight some of the ways that it really stresses the facts, the data, the experts. Whereas the other side, what are they resorting to? Personal attacks, broad statements of racism and misogyny. So it says, parents across the United States are calling on leaders to follow the guidance of public health experts on COVID in schools and to take urgent action to open the schools in regions where they have been closed in spite of low to moderate COVID rates. This week, 9 parent protests happened across the U.S., right? We showed footage from the one in New York City. Go check out schools.us on Twitter from footage from across the country. I've also retweeted a lot of it on my account. Public health experts now agree schools can reopen and remain open safely without driving COVID transmission. Yet many elected leaders are ignoring this consensus. Counterintuitively, schools are closed in areas with the lowest rates of COVID, right? Parents are calling on leaders to follow the guidance of, and then they list out all the people who are saying it, right? Of course, science is not just like one voice. There's always going to be people who have other opinions, but the overwhelming majority of sources we've been looking at this whole time to drive policy are saying to open the schools. Fauci, CDC, right? AAP, the JAMA, UNICEF, WHO, all of these big organizations, Harvard, right? So the majority of U.S. school districts reopen this fall. Therefore, communities that keep schools closed this year or close them at low positivity rates to contain COVID spread are outliers, right? They're outliers if they're closed. Across Europe, schools have remained opened. Even as countries battle COVID in light of the growing concerns about children's mental health, physical health, and educational outcomes from remote learning, we must demand the reopening of schools in all regions. The apparent culprit for persistent closures, that special interests rather than public health experts are driving decisions about school reopening. It's a troubling pattern. I went over this pattern last week in my video about how it's unions that are driving these decisions. They're putting the fears, the outsized fears of teachers over the future of our students. And they go on to make many more points. I definitely suggest you go check that article out. I've got it linked in the description down below. I also went over a lot of these different aspects and sourced them in my video last week, so I suggest going to check that out. But it's time. We have to get these schools open across the country, because we don't need to guess at what the impact is going to be. We already know for years our students have been going down in their academic performance, and we see what that impact is on our society today. So the question isn't what is the impact going to be, but is how much is the current impact going to be compounded, and who are the students who are going to be left behind even more. Now in the summer, I was saying that, we're 50 states, we should have 50 different responses, but at this point, the evidence is quite clear that school districts across the country should be open. And now we can have localized decision making. I'm 100% for those localized decisions where if you have to close down a classroom or you have to close down a building and do 2 weeks, right? That's local decisions. But to have blanket shutdowns in any city across the country without plans to reopen is unacceptable. So make sure that you let us know in those comments down below where we can support and how we can support the school reopening efforts in your district. Definitely stay in touch with me. Like I said, on my social media, you could get me on Instagram, you could get me on Twitter. I'm going to be talking about these rallies. I'm going to be talking about the issues. I'm going to be keeping you updated and having those important conversations. So make sure you follow, make sure you like this video, make sure you share this video. That's super important. We got to spread this word all across the country so we can disrupt the status quo of what has been the coronavirus policy for the past 9 months. It's time to get our kids back in these classrooms because we know remote learning just doesn't cut it. Families deserve to have a choice to send their students to in-person learning. There are so many students whose learning needs require them to be in person, let alone those students who just need the structure and that little extra support. This is so important that you show your support, that you don't back down. People are screaming at you, you're racist, you're misogynist, right? They can call you whatever they want as long as we open these schools. And we know who's going to be on the right side of history. So let's get out there, let's keep fighting a good fight, and stay foolish, y'all.